Okay. Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Just as a reminder for everyone, once again, a bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded live, so please do keep your voices polite. Please do make sure that mobile phones, tablets, iOS devices, etc., are set to silent, so we are not disturbed through the meeting. If you are not talking, please make sure you are on mute. And if you are talking, please do turn on your camera and keep it off unless you're asking a question or talking on that regard. In addition for tonight, just a quick extra announcement. Can I also make members aware of the fact that we are now in the pre-election period, or PERDA, that will run through until the polling day on May the 6th. And while this doesn't prohibit decision making during this time, we have taken advice from the monitoring officer that there are no decisions on this evening's agenda that constrain us from holding this meeting. But I would like to ask that members are mindful of this guidance circulated to all members by the monitoring officer. So in terms of attendance tonight, currently we have myself, Councillor Guy Granderson, in the chair. We have Councillor Paul Fishwick, we have Councillor Pauline Hellier-Simons, we have Councillor Abdul Lloyds, we have Councillor Angus Ross, twice for some reason, Officer Callum Wareham, Councillor Emma Hobbs, Officer Neil Carr, Councillor Rachel Shepherd-Dubay, Councillor Shirley Boyd, and Tragar Thomas, who I've not seen before, so I assume he might be from the Fire Authority. So before that, apologies for absence. I've had one from Councillor Alison Swaddle and from Graham Howe, who's being substituted by Pauline Hellier-Simons. Is there anyone else, Callum?
Not aware of any, Chairman.
Okay. Moving on to item number 81, minutes of the previous meeting. One of my extraordinary meetings again, in fact, two of them, I believe, where we basically held. So I'm just going to quickly go through each one by one. So page number 5, has anyone got any points? I will whittle through them, and please put your hand up if you've got anything. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and well, 11, and that will move us on to the next set. Do we need to take them one by one, Callum, or do we need to do them, or can we do them all on block to approve?
If there's no objections, you can do them all on block, Chairman.
Is there any objections to that one? Otherwise, we'll do them all on block in a minute. Taking silence as acceptance. Now, this was a very good meeting. So page number 13 from the meeting of February 22nd. Page 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. 20. 21. And finally 22. Okay, if no one's got any objections, then could I ask for a vote in favour of these minutes being accepted as is? If you are in favour, please do raise your hands now. And I think that's all current committee members present voting in favour. Is there anyone against? Or any abstentions? Please do shout out now. Nope. Okay. Item number 82, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest on the Pauline?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to declare an interest in the item on the fire service. I'm one of Woking Borough Council's representatives on the Fire Authority.
Okay. Thank you, Pauline. Okay. Item number 83. Any public questions, Callum?
None received, Chair.
Any member questions?
And again,
Item
none
94.
received, Chair.
Okay, so if that's the case, we're on to item number 85, which is the local fire update. So, who's is
That will be
Trigger
Treg
here?
here, Chairman.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you, Chairman. So I shall just see if the sharing the screen function works. 1 second.
No worries. Thank you, and thank you for being in uniform. I wasn't expecting that. Although I'm technically in work uniform, so I can't comment.
You know what they say, women love men in uniform.
So you should have permissions to do it, to share screens anyway. If needed. Is it the presentation that was sent around?
It is indeed. It's on its way. I can see it loading, so we should be there any second.
I'm going to download it just in case.
Okay, that seems. Oh no, I was about to give up on it, but
there we go.
Super. Okay, so well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me along to the meeting this evening to go through an update from Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service. As it says on the slide, my name is Area Manager Tregear Thomas. Currently Area Manager responsible for prevention and protection across the county, but substantive post is as Hub Manager for Wokingham and Bracknell Unitary Authorities. So this evening we'll be looking at a number of points. Obviously it's been a strange year, to be fair. We're going to have a little look at the financial position as it affects the fire service. We'll look at the targeted savings that we've been seeking to make year on year. We'll also be looking at the impacts, or some of the impacts, of the Grenfell Tower fire and the recent outcomes of the Phase 1 Grenfell public inquiry. We'll have a little look at the strategic asset investment framework for the service, consider some of the financial pressures of 2021 and beyond, and a little look at the precept as part of that. We'll discuss Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Services and their findings and the next steps. And then finally, we'll look at proposed strategies for 2020 to 2023, covering all areas of the fire service delivery, which is response, prevention and protection. And as part of that, we'll talk about the local safety plans, which really describe how we deliver our service in each unitary authority. So, probably the first thing that I wanted to talk about would be the elephant in the room, COVID, and how it has impacted upon all of us across society, but including in the fire service. Obviously, it came in about this time last year, and the fire service had to adapt rapidly to ensure that it continued to deliver its essential core services throughout the period of the pandemic. But we've gone beyond that. So in the early stages of the COVID pandemic, we engaged very, very strongly with the local resilience forum for the Thames Valley. And as part of that work, we were responsible for setting up a logistics cell which controlled the delivery of personal protective equipment across the Thames Valley. So that's to hospitals and care facilities, etc. So coordinating that delivery and making sure that people had the PPE that they needed. Other things that we've been involved in, we have heavily supported the Local Resilience Forum, chairing the Strategic Command Group and the TCG as well at different stages. We have assisted different unitary authorities throughout the county with the setting up of mass lateral flow testing, and also the coordination and setup and logistics behind the mass vaccination set up, currently operating out of the Majeski Stadium. Beyond that, we had a call from our partner agencies, particularly South Central Ambulance Service, who were struggling to have sufficient ambulances at the height of the pandemic in order to respond. We supplied them with 10 firefighters to drive 10 different ambulances for an extended period, thus enabling them to keep more ambulances on the road, obviously by dual crewing with paramedics. So that gives a flavour of some of the involvements that we have had. The most important thing, though, is that we've managed to maintain our service and to maintain the number of fire engines available throughout the pandemic period, and continue to do so. It's obviously had some impact with regard to our front public-facing services that we deliver, such as Safe and Well visits, where we visit vulnerable people in their own homes in order to reduce the risk of fire and indeed injury from fire. Clearly, that wasn't appropriate during the height of the pandemic, because the same people who are vulnerable to fire are also in the highly at-risk groups with regard to COVID. So we've been doing that through other means, remotely where possible. And it's the same with our protection functions. The next bit that I'd like to mention is in relation to the Grenfell Tower. This is an ongoing issue for all fire services. As you'll be aware, immediately following the Grenfell Tower fire, we engaged in a significant amount of work across Berkshire, inspecting over 157 high-rise residential buildings and conducting some significant safety checks. Obviously, as the process of the inquiry has gone forwards, more things have been identified, which has led to us needing to revisit these buildings and ensure the safety of residents. Looking at, yes, everything with regards to the external cladding and wall systems, but also looking at internal compartmentation. So the compartmentation that stops fire spreading from one flat into a corridor or potentially into other flats. So again, we've got teams that are working hard to continue with that work, and particularly focusing on the outcomes and 46 recommendations made by the public inquiry. Another thing that I wanted to mention was to do with fire standards. Some people may be aware that the government is just moving forwards now with new fire standards, which are things that we as a fire service will ensure that we align to ensure that we're delivering the absolute best service that we can possibly deliver to members of the public. Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Services, again, you'll be aware that they inspected us in the 2018-19 inspection cycle, and we received the outcome of that inspection at the start of 2020, where we were graded as good in all aspects that were being examined. So that's to do with people, efficiency and effectiveness, which was a really good result, and I've got to say matched the highest results received across the country. So something we're really proud of, and an indication of the service that we are able to provide to members of the public. So moving on, the next slide is looking at the financial position. So there you can see our budget 2020 to 2021 of £35 million. You can see that we've made significant savings, both in the long and the short term. So between 2010 and 2016, we saved £4.96 million from our base budget. So significant savings there. That was largely achieved through reductions in staff. Between April 2016 and November 2019, we delivered a further £975,000 worth of savings with a restructure which looked at the way in which we staff our fire stations and also our flexible duty officer cadre. I've got some good news that comes in next. The figure with regards to the amount of money that we need to identify additionally, which I have here is 1,281. Sorry, £1.281 million worth of savings. Due to savings that we have identified in the past year, this figure is now reduced to £994,000 that we seek to save or generate income, and we've been able to push that out now that needs to be saved by 22-23, so that relieves some of the immediate financial pressures. Part of the savings that have come in there are as a result of COVID. You'll be aware that the government has put in place a pay freeze for public sector workers. That therefore we were budgeting for a pay rise has enabled us to save some of that money, which has eased that position slightly for us. We've got planned a significant programme to refresh our capital assets, and that will require further funding as we move forwards beyond the coming financial year. Okay, on this next slide, my screen is a little bit slower than it's coming up there. We can see the 2015 to 2019 saving target update. So the restructure of the service support functions and moving to the local hub model of delivery saved us in the region of £1.1 million. We disestablished our retained support unit. This was a group of people who the plan was that where we have part-time firefighters, the retained support unit would enable, if we were short of crew on a part-time station, that we had full-time staff that we could send there to cover that gap. That was found not to be a viable proposition, and as a result of that, it was disbanded with a saving of £425,000. We introduced new remotely managed stations, and we significantly reduced the number of flexible duty officers that we had. In fact, Berkshire was quite pioneering with this, in that we are the only county where we have station managers, level 2 commanders as we call them, riding on board fire appliances, and that has meant that we've been able to reduce flexible duty officers down to just 18 from a previous high of 45 if you go back 5 or 6 years. We've also had the closure, as you'll be aware, of Wargrave Fire Station with potential savings of £168,000. And the planned closure of Pangbourne Fire Station, again a part-time fire station, which will be closed when the new fire station, which is being built over in Theale, comes online, and that again will realise a saving of £168,000. Okay, moving on. So the next thing to look at is the strategic asset investment framework. Sorry, my slides are lagging behind. There it is. The first new tri-service community station was opened in Hungerford back in 2017. And this really is the new style of fire station, where all 3 services have access to the station building, thus saving money, not just for ourselves, but for our partner emergency services. With the second tri-service community station opening just up the road in Crowthorne in summer of last year. And again, to have the 3 services all operating out of the same building, yes, there's cost savings to be made, but there's also big advantages with regard to the interaction that fosters as well. So positive all round. We've got a third tri-service community station, which is one that's being opened shortly in Theale, and that is, I'm sure Angus will tell us, that's been topped out just recently, so it's well on track. We've got, I'm pleased to say, 11 new generation Volvo fire appliances that have been delivered since 2017, at a cost to the taxpayer of £200,000 each. I've got here a further 4 are due in 2021. I'm pleased to say that they are now in county. We've just got them down in Hampshire at the moment, having a few last little pieces added to them. So they'll be coming on stream very quickly. So that gives us a really up-to-date fleet of fire engines that are ahead of anything that we've been used to having. Just looking at my 11 there, do you know what? That's not correct. It's 15 with an additional 4 coming. So that the figure there is 15 new generation Volvos with an additional 4 en route, which are the ones I just talked about being literally about to arrive. We've got a new aerial ladder platform. Ignore the 53 there. It's a 45 metre aerial ladder platform, ordered back in 2018. As you can imagine, for a specialist vehicle of this nature, there is quite a long lead time in order to get them in county. This one at the cost of £800,000. I spoke to the fleet manager today, and we are confident that that'll be with us and looking to be available for use in June or July, depending on training of our crews to use it. So that's a really significant asset that we will have there. And finally, capital investment up to 2021 is funded within the medium-term financial plan, and that's just to say that, you know, all of the assets have been identified as being essential to the service we provide, and that they've been planned for and budgeted for going forwards. Okay, so is that clicked on? There it goes. Okay, so strategic investment framework, say adjusted for 2021, we've had £1.25 million of investment in the refurbishment of whole-time stations. So some of our stations were starting to become quite old, to be fair. So this has been really, really good news. It's brought them up to date, and that programme continues as we go forwards. The additional 4 new Volvo appliances that I was talking about, that'll bring this up to a total of 19 of the new style Volvo appliances, and they're literally having the last pieces added to them. We expect them to be in county very, very soon. There's a potential for there was a potential for a small number of older Volvos to come in. Unfortunately, COVID got in the way of that, but we still will be looking to ensure that we provide vehicles for our fire cadet schemes. And the closest one to Wokingham is currently being run out of Crowthorne Fire Station. So that offers opportunities to young people for things that they can do in an evening, where they can build up skills with regard to teamwork and cooperation, which is really useful for young people. We've also invested in some new 4x4 crew cab vehicles. There are 6 of these, which have been brought in, and they're going to be dotted around the county, predominantly at our on-call stations. And these will just give us an additional capability off-road, but also at times of snow, severe weather, flooding, that sort of thing. We have a new 4x4 vehicle that's also fitted with a pump that will be based out in Maidenhead, and that's particularly to target an area there which can only be reached by a vehicle of that sort, where we've got dwellings that we need to get to. And then last but not least, we're looking at the requirements for a new vehicle for our water rescue teams that are currently based in Caversham. So, moving on to the 2019 to 23 corporate plan. This sets out what the Fire Authority is planning to do over the next 4 years. We put that out to public consultation, and it's currently running on the new strategies for prevention, protection and response, which we'll have a look at in just a second. The Fire Authority has considered consultation responses, and the updated plan was formally published in 2020. And again, this is a document that we continue to revisit and ensure that it is still suitable for the risks that we have within Berkshire. So the next bit I wanted to look at was the prevention proposals between 2020 and 23. First of all, introduce a new risk-based programme of follow-up for safe and well visits for our most vulnerable residents. So as I've identified, we do these visits where people are identified to us as being highly at risk from fire. It could be that a caring agency, for example, has been in to visit the individual and identified some significant causes for concern. We will go and do a safe and well visit, make sure they've got smoke detectors, make sure that everything we can do to keep them safe has been done. And this is really us saying that we will then follow that up and make sure we've got a programme of revisit that enables us to go back after a suitable amount of time to ensure that that vulnerable person has continued to remain safe in their own home. We've renamed our target groups for safe and well visits to better reflect how we're targeting them. And those have been renamed as risk to individuals and risk to households. And this really goes to talk about where we've got an individual who is vulnerable in themselves and at risk from dying in a fire. That would be a risk to an individual. But we've also identified that certain households tend to have more fires than others. And so it's only right and proper that we should target those households as well to ensure that we reduce the incidence of fire, even though the risk of death in those fires is slightly reduced. Within the road safety programme, we've included targeting of motorcyclists, and we've teamed up with Biker Down, and there is a motorcycle club that meets quite regularly within the Wokingham area, and they have been providing motorcyclists to come along to our Biker Down educational events that are held on the fire stations. We've focused activities in support of children and young people, particularly looking at road and water safety education programmes. We've talked about the fire cadets and Fire Safe. Now, Fire Safe is a specialist programme that we run where a young person has been engaging in fire play and setting fire to things, where we can engage with that young person and help them to learn how to use fire in a safe manner and not to play with it. You can imagine at the moment water safety is really starting to take a heightened position in our thinking. We've had a couple of tragic events in recent weeks where people unfortunately have lost their lives, having drowned in the river and indeed in a canal. And as we move forwards into the nicer weather, again, there's a temptation for people to gather close to water and indeed sometimes to swim and to jump in. So we're aiming to target that in the coming months. We have a water safety week at the end of April where we'll be launching a lot of our work on that. And we continue to pilot an adult fire safe programme. This is a programme, so as I described for the young people, the adult fire safe programme, this is for grown adults who again have been engaged in using fire in an inappropriate way. And we've certainly shown some good results in early pilots of this scheme. So we will continue to look at those. Moving on to response proposals. So in 2021, we propose to undertake a review of our specialist water rescue capacity to ensure it continues to be aligned to local risk and national best practice. Now, our water rescue teams based over in Caversham are indeed a national asset that can be used by any other county should there be spate conditions. So, example, if up in Yorkshire they had a really severe flooding situation and we didn't have the same thing here, then again our assets would be able to be used by another county, and that's something that we can draw on as well should we require additional support, as indeed we did back in the floods, I think back in 2011. I can see a councillor has their hand raised.
Emma?
Hello to you. Hello, it's Emma Hobbs. Are you able to answer questions later?
Yes, I'll take questions at the end if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so We're looking at our technical rescue capability to ensure again that continues to be aligned to best practice. We're also proposing to undertake a review of our incident support capability to ensure it continues to be aligned to local risk and again reflects that national best practice. A project's being undertaken to consider feasibility of introducing dynamic risk-based daytime nucleus crewing, which are just alternative methods in which we can crew full-time fire stations. So we're always keeping our eyes open to see if there is a more effective way that matches with the local need, and again open to those different methods of crewing should we find one that works. We propose to retain the current operational planning assumptions and use these assumptions to underpin the integrated risk management plan going forwards. And to avoid having to reduce our ability to meet our response standard in order to balance our budget, the Fire Authority continues to lobby central government for a fair funding settlement to sustain our optimum model of service delivery. And again, we certainly are a very highly rated value for money fire service when you compare what a taxpayer in Berkshire pays compared to the service that's being delivered. We do factor quite favourably in that. So next I want to look at protection. So protection is the business fire safety side of things. So it's how we make sure businesses live up to their responsibilities under the fire safety order. And this also includes the common parts of blocks of flats, as well as office buildings and any other building that's not a dwelling. Pretty much. So we're going to develop our risk-based inspection program methodology to look at both risk to property and risk of compliance. And this is really taking it a step further. So as you would imagine, we have a system whereby we identify our most risky buildings and we make sure we inspect them as a priority. But now we're also looking at how we can feed in levels of compliance. So for example, a correlation that we have found is that where restaurants have low food hygiene ratings, they also tend to have low fire safety standards. And so by bringing in other regulators and sharing information with regard to compliance across all levels, we're able to better target our inspections to make sure that we're finding where the fire safety problems exist. And then we need to continue to respond to changes in legislation and guidance related to building regulations and fire safety, and ensure that this is reflected in our policies, processes and ways of working. The fire safety field and legislation around it, largely driven by the Grenfell Tower fire and the subsequent reviews and inquiries, is moving at quite a pace, and legislation is being brought through government as we speak, which is liable, well, not liable, will change the way that we deliver fire safety nationally. Berkshire is in a very strong position. We have ensured that we have expanded our protection function in order to deal with the new and expected regulatory challenges that will be coming our way. So that was a whistle-stop tour through the last year. I know there's some questions there, so let's move on to those questions. I will try and stop sharing my screen so that I can. There must be a way to do that. There we go. There it is.
Thank you, Tregear. That was very, very interesting. Members, if you could put your hands up if you've got any questions. I will go to Emma first, as she put her hand up earlier. If you've got any questions, please do raise your hand and I'll go in order, if that's all right. So Emma, go ahead.
Hello to you. Good evening. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the fire service for everything that you've done, because I know it hasn't been easy. And as I have a brother-in-law who's an ex-fireman, yes, I know what it's been like. I'm very, very interested in hearing what you're saying about having lessons in things like walking by rivers, etc., which I assume is going to. Yeah. One of the things that always perturbs me is the number of people, and I know what happened was absolutely tragic, and it was, but the number of people who are on their phones and not keeping an eye on things, I'm afraid. And it happens when they cross the road. It happens when you're walking down by the rivers. It happens everywhere. So I ask that, because I won't be a counsellor, so I do ask that when you do this training, could you emphasise to people, sitting on your mobile phone, you're not concentrating on what is going on, especially if you have children. You don't know what they're doing, you don't know where they're going, etc., etc. And I just ask that the fire service could, if you'd emphasise that when you do your training and when you put your leaflets out, I think it would maybe, hopefully, open eyes up to people. Again, thank you very much for everything you have done. It is appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor. I absolutely agree. I think the danger of walking down a towpath or near to a volume of water, people do not realise it. And you're right, distraction is a significant cause of accidents. So definitely we will be emphasising that, along with other messages. Again, we've got lots of pubs where the gardens are right next to water as well. So again, we'll be making sure that we get the information out to the places where it is needed. We've got hotspots where children like to go and play in the rivers, jump into the rivers, those sort of things. So again, we'll be making sure that our crews are targeting those areas and working closely with the other emergency services as well. So one of the interesting things that we'll be doing this year is also promoting safety at the seaside. Because a lot of our residents will be going on staycations this year, perhaps to places they're not used to going. So again, we don't want the tragedy to happen in another county to our residents. So we'll also be emphasising that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you, Emma. I'll go to Paul next.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Tregar, for a very interesting and helpful presentation. And a big thank you to all your team as well and everything that you do. Couple of points. I've just got one actually for Callum. It's really a minor declaration of interest as director of a small business, because you're starting to mention small businesses. But we do have a food hygiene rating of 5.
You'll be fine.
So I thought I'd just mention that because it does need probably noting just for a declaration of interest. Closure of Wargrave Fire Station, what impact has that had on attending incidents in the area?
It has had no discernible impact. We did significant studies prior to the closure to identify what impact it could cause. Regrettably, due to the difficulty that we'd experienced in maintaining a crew at Wargrave Fire Station, its availability was very limited anyway. So we've seen no discernible decrease in service to the area. It's covered by the other fire stations.
Okay, thank you for that. Where does the fire and rescue service generate other income over and above the precepts? Because you mentioned generating additional income.
It's very difficult for us to generate other income. Indeed, we are constrained in what we can actually do. So the sort of place that other income can come from is, for example, when we open up Thiel Fire Station, we'll no longer have the need for Pangbourne Fire Station, and so obviously we'll be looking to maximise the revenue from that site, if that's the way that the local community choose for that asset to be used.
Okay, I've got a couple more if that's okay. The new Volvo fire engines, are those procured directly by Berkshire Fire Service, or do you go with other counties surrounding and all club together to get the best deal?
I better get this one right, or else Angus, I think, will be telling me off. So no, we get together with other fire services. We find that our buying power by doing that is massively increased, and we have managed to secure them at a competitive price.
Okay, and thinking of climate change, air quality, what are the type of engines? Are they Euro 6 compliant, or you've got something different?
So I can't give you the absolute figures on them. I expect Angus can. However, they are very, very low pollution. That is a thing that we have within the fire service to make sure that we do keep that carbon footprint down. So I don't have the exact figures, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Okay, and the other vehicles that you purchased in, are you looking to purchase electric or hydrogen powered ones?
So this is something which is being looked at currently, and indeed there is a desire within the fire service to do exactly that for our what we call white fleet, which is the non-frontline vehicles. Then wherever possible, again, we'll be looking to go for the minimum impact, and that will include hybrid and electric vehicles.
So do you have a date when you're likely to start purchasing electric or hydrogen?
I don't have a date for you, Councillor, no.
Okay. Is it sometime next year or this year?
I'm sure Angus is about to jump in.
Angus,
There he is.
Angus's hand has shot up, so I'm going to ask him to come in here as well.
I'm going to concede to Angus.
No, you're just about there, Trig. All I would say is, in reply to Paul's questions there, the procurement of these 19 vehicles was part of 35 vehicles, which were procured for the 3 Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Berkshire, which the added benefit was that we can align the techniques and align the equipment that the crews have. So if they happen to be operating over the border from one to another, supporting them, they all know what they've got, as it were. And in terms of the electric and hybrid, we made sure that in looking at replacing some of what Trig called the white fleet, this is the vehicles, not fire vehicles, but support vehicles, where possible, the ones that we'll be replacing over the next year or couple of years will, if we can, and financially effective as well as anything else, become hybrid or electric. There's a determination to go that way.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angus. I assume that was you done, Paul, when you went on mute then suddenly. So I'll go to Shirley.
Yes, that was my last one. Sorry, I should have said that.
To lip read on these things. Shirley, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Guy, and thank you, Trig, for that interesting presentation. I'm a little intrigued. Are you under the safe and I've got a couple of questions, but I'm particularly intrigued because you said under the safe and well that there were certain households who were at more risk. And I'm just quite interested to know whether you're going to divulge, what sort of households this might be. I'm very intrigued. I just want to know if they're already in my ward. I need to be keeping an eye on.
There will be, Councillor. One of the tools that we use when we're trying to locate these households, we use a data set called Mosaic. We also get some data sets through from the NHS. This information can tell us the age of people living at different addresses. It can also tell us the socio-economic or the likely socio-economic makeup of that particular what we call a super output area. So it's not a precise tool where we can identify a single household and say, well, they definitely will be of greater risk, but it enables us to focus more than we otherwise would be able to. So by doing that, we can then target. And again, if people are living on their own, this can be a significant risk. Single parents, those sort of groups of people. Again, where it's a risk to household, what we usually find is that people are able to move away from the fire if one does start. So quite often you have superficial injuries and then obviously a large amount of destruction with regard to the fire in the house. Where we're looking at risk of a significant injury and death, it's usually where people are unable to effectively move away from the fire, even if they, for example, if they don't know that the fire started because they don't have smoke detection or because they're not able-bodied and unable to move away from the fire.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. And I've had some experience of your safe and well service when my late husband was around because he was severely disabled, and a team from yourselves came along and went around the house and helped put in some smoke detectors and also gave us guidance on what to do in the event of a fire, which was very useful and quite surprising, really, which was, rather than try to get my husband out, it was to isolate him in a room and make sure that the fire couldn't get to him, and for me to go outside, so that I could tell the fire service where he was when the engine arrived, which I'd never would have thought to do without, I would have been struggling to hoist him into his wheelchair, and meanwhile we would have been burnt. So that was really, I think it's a really, really valuable service, which is why I was telling that story. One of the things that's cropped up more recently, he's passed away now, but my very elderly mother-in-law, who is deaf, but of course wouldn't admit to being deaf, had a smoke alarm, and she had no idea that it was beeping because the battery had got to the end of its life, because she couldn't hear it. And I wonder, and it didn't have a little, a flashing light or some other means of detecting that was wrong. So it was only when I went over and I said, "Oh, your smoke alarm's, it's not working. It needs a new battery." And she said, "Oh no, it's fine, dear. The fire brigade put that in for me." But obviously it had gone past it. And it did occur to me that people who are deaf may have a problem with those. And I don't know if it's something that you've been made aware of at all.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. And it is something we're acutely aware of. And indeed, it is one of our at-risk groups, is where people have got sensory needs, be it through eyesight or be it through hearing. We do provide smoke detectors for people who are hard of hearing, and again they do have the strobe lights. We're also able to fit vibrating pads for when they're asleep. So again, these are available. So it's important that
I think the issue is that a lot of old people would never admit to being deaf, and that was the thing with my mother-in-law. I'm not deaf. And she clearly was, and that is a difficulty for you to identify them.
It is.
And I've just got, sorry, if I could just have one more very small thing. I'm kind of wondering whether you are finding that there are more people with hoarding disorder, and whether you're having fires from resulting from that, because I understand that that's an area which is on the increase.
Certainly, my own experience is that we are identifying more households which do have hoarding issues, and again we make sure that we safeguard those households and work with other agencies in order to try and reduce the level of hoarding and to make people safe while that's being done, because again it's not something which is usually a quick fix. It's over a period of time.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Shirley. As someone who is ruthless when it comes to a sort out, I do not fall into that latter category. Abdul and Paul, is your hand shot up again, by the way?
Thank you, Guy. Hi, Trigger.
Hi.
My question: risk to individual and risk to household. How do you get this individual in your database, and how many are there in our borough? First question. And secondly, you haven't touched down on HMO property, which is there are young students' lives, anything can happen. How do you assess them, how safe they are, and how often do you have that checkup? And also, same question applied to warehouses and factories in our borough. And if you could answer that, then I've got one more later on, I can tell you that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So yes, with regard to the databases, as I've described, we actually run something we call an adult referral programme, where we go out and train other agencies, so carers agencies. We work closely with South Central Ambulance Service, anybody who's likely to interact with a vulnerable person, so that they can then complete one of our referral forms and refer into us if they identify somebody who's significantly at risk of fire. So that's for the individuals at risk, or indeed they could self-refer, or a member of their family could refer them. So that's for them. For the people who it's a household risk, again, we're targeting there using data sets, everything from socioeconomic backgrounds to the age of people, which we get via the NHS data set that comes through to us. So we bring all of that together, and that enables us to identify an area where we're likely to find people most at risk. With regard to HMOs, this is always a very difficult nut to crack, shall I say. We've identified HMOs to be a significant risk with regards to fire safety. Regrettably, the fire safety legislation surrounding HMOs is quite complicated, in so much as the fire service has powers under the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order with regard to the common parts of a house of multiple occupation, whereas the local authority will have regulatory authority over the individual rooms where people sleep within the HMO. So really it is a case of working together, and that's a piece of work that I'm looking at the moment, is how we can coordinate more precisely with local authorities in order to go out and make sure we do regulate in houses of multiple occupation. On that, they are on our risk-based inspection programme, and we have raised them to a priority. The difficulty we also have is where students are living in shared housing, they often do not meet the threshold of house of multiple occupation. It gets quite technical, but it's because they are engaged in a common pursuit, that of being a student, and therefore they may not fall under our regulatory ability. So it really is a case of making sure that we identify who is responsible and making sure that we do make those premises safe. We've also got the fire safety education that we try to push out to universities, particularly trying to make sure that young people who are going to be living on their own in a rented property for the first time in their lives are aware of the fire safety precautions that they need to be following. So it's education as well as the enforcement side of things. With regard to warehouses and factories, again, they feature on our inspection programme. So our fire safety inspecting officers will go out and inspect. If there's any concerns raised, whether to be a complaint or indeed if there were to be a fire, then they would be automatically audited to make sure that they're compliant with the fire safety order.
Thank you. And if I can ask one more question, you did touch down on restaurants and so on. Very pleased to hear that you are aware of the hazard and assessment. My background is from restaurant. All these small establishment, people living upstairs, is very hazardous, and I don't think most of them have firehouse smoke detectors or fire protection doors at all. And we have a lot of licensed property within our borough and Greater Berkshire as well. What are you doing in order to make it safe? Because I know there's a cost element of it. However, life comes before, and when incident happen, it's too late. What is your plan and program in order to get them up to date?
So actually, I think it's really important to identify that under the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, it's the responsibility of the responsible person, who's usually the employer in a business of that type. It really is their responsibility to ensure that they complete a fire risk assessment and have in place all of the fire precautions necessary. As a regulator, we will go out and check and make sure that businesses have done this. And again, by targeting areas, if we do have fires, then that will enable us to focus. But coming back to the risk-based inspection targeting of our resources, again, where we find that shops and restaurants have got low levels of compliance with other agencies, and indeed with the local authority is one of those agencies that I'm thinking of, that will enable us to then predict that they're liable to have lower levels of fire safety adherence, and then go in and audit those premises. But you're absolutely right. The accommodation above shops and restaurants has in the past been really problematic, and it's the fire separation and compartmentation. There should be an hour's separation between the shop area and any dwelling, and quite often we find that that's not the case.
Thank you. And finally, Chairman, if I can ask one more, which may be nothing to do with the fire authority. However, as a local authority, your page 13 protection proposal 2023 paragraph 1 and 2 I've read. Will you include these areas such as Graiseley in case there is any sort of leakage of nuclears, leakage and so on? Or is it entirely Ministry of Defense, Ministry of MOD's entirely their responsibility? I just want to clear as a local authority where we are and have we got enough resource in case there is any leakage to support and help our resident who's living there. Thank you.
So as a fire and rescue service, we're required under the Fire Safety Act and the Civil Contingencies Act to ensure that we're able to respond appropriately to any foreseeable emergency. And as such, any site or factory or process that operates in Berkshire is required to operate to certain standards. And indeed, the site that you mentioned will be required to have both on and off-site plans, of which we are part of for the off-site element of those plans. So we are able to respond and protect the people of Berkshire for any foreseeable accident that might take place.
Pauline, I've seen your hands come up here. Is this something you want to speak on as well, or are you?
So it's really just to follow up what Trig's been saying about prevention. Members might be interested to know that 3 of our council departments, that's housing, adult services and children's services, already pass on information when they know it and confidentially to the fire service of anybody that they think might be vulnerable and would benefit from a safe and well visit. But I really wanted to say to everybody that's in this meeting, you and your friends and relations, if you know of anybody that's vulnerable, whether they're deaf or immobile or old and on their own or in any way vulnerable, please get in touch with the fire service, because a safe and well visit could easily save their life. Thank you. Thank you, Trig.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clive.
Guy, and apologies for being late. I got held up. I know I'm normally 30 seconds late, but not 15 minutes, so sorry about that. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Abdul has started to ask some of the questions that I was going to, and it's about Burfield. And have you had recently any rehearsal for evacuation of people who live within the DEPZ zone?
So with regard to all of our plans, we've got on and off-site plans for a number of establishments within the county. These are kept up to date, and they are exercised on a regular basis. Obviously, can't go into details with regard to specific sites.
Okay. So when you say that they're exercised regularly and kept up to date, can you tell me when it was last exercised?
So, as I say, I'm not going to.
Don't tell me what it was or anything like that, or just say 6 months ago, 9 months ago.
I'm not able to go into details with regard to a specific site, as I'm sure you'll understand, Councillor. Some of the sites within the county are quite sensitive, so I won't be giving information with regard to any specific sites.
You're also asking too broad a question, Clive, as someone who's literally just passed a cyber risk management certification. There are many steps to a risk exercise. It could be that Tregar and the team have sat down and done a walkthrough checklist exercise yesterday, a full interruption scale military style exercise. We won't know about it until a long time after. So it's a bit of a too broad of a question for you to get an answer to that one, I'm afraid.
Okay, all right. I would have preferred to have a bit more of an answer, but if that's the way you want to answer it, that's fine. You obviously have a good working relationship with Oxfordshire Fire Service and Buckingham Fire Service, because you've been able to buy some vehicles with them, which probably got you a better price. Do you see many other opportunities for working together with them?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely essential that we do, and there are many cost savings to be had by doing so. And we're actively engaged in collaboration across the 3 counties, Oxfordshire, Berkshire, and Buckinghamshire. So we are busy aligning both our equipment, our policies. Indeed, we share the same fire control room across the 3 counties. So absolutely, there is closer and closer cooperation between the 3 counties all the time.
Do you think that closer and closer cooperation will lead to merger one day?
That's not a decision that would be for me to make. What I would say is already we share fire engines with a closest mobilisation system. So if a Berkshire fire appliance is closest to an Oxfordshire fire, we send the Berkshire appliance. If officers are required in Buckinghamshire, then again Berkshire officers would go, and vice versa. So really the boundaries between the counties, for all intents and purposes, are being reduced at all times, and that's a cost saving. Obviously, where you've got stations either side of a county border, they don't need to be in close proximity to each other anymore. So those resources can be better positioned. So it's got to be a positive thing for the public.
So you don't think that if the 3 services merged, that it would be too large and too unwieldy to manage?
That would be a decision for the fire authority and for politicians to make. That really isn't one that I would be in a position to make.
No, hopefully you'd have a view, and if that discussion was happening.
As I say, I think that would be one for politicians to look into.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Emma, your hand's up again. Unless you had anything else, Clive?
Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt you. Can I just say, to give Tregar a peace of mind to Clive, I used to work near something that was dangerous, and we didn't even know when alarms were going to call. We all work very closely when it comes to things like this. So I think, Clive, it's something that he's right, it's private, it's confidential, and nothing like that would ever be released. So thank you.
Thank you. A couple of quick ones from me, Tregar, and then I'll go back to everyone else if anyone's got anything else that comes to mind. My one's basically simply related to I mean, you've already outlined quite a bit of the good COVID response, but it's much more of an operational aspect. Is in when we had the lockdowns last year, were responses down? Because having previously had to call out the fire service to a fire in a property near mine previously, the comment somewhat sarcastically from the fire crew and also from the police who were in present was, yeah, they're bored now because there's no longer as many fires in around these days. So when they're out, they will happily smash down a door to get into the fire, which is completely fair enough. But it does remind me that the amount of fires, because of the amount of good work that the fire service has done over the last 20 to 30 years, together with technology improving, etc., is that household fires and fire risk, as it were, has dropped down slightly. As in, it's much more to be a inconvenience as opposed to a catastrophic fire. So, during lockdown did we have an increase in domestic incidents and a decrease in car incidents due to the crashes on the motorway, etc., and a decrease in manufacturing, industrial, or did it all remain about level? I'm just curious as to know what happened. I know you guys were incredibly busy, but it's just interesting to know that pattern.
We did see a slight change in the profile of the fires we were getting. As you suggested, it is people who have fires. So with people being at home more during the lockdown period, we did see an increase in domestic dwelling fires. Probably the most marked increase we saw was during the good weather in the first lockdown, and we had a lot of outdoor fires. everything from fires started by barbecues setting fire to sheds through to bonfires that have got out of control and set fire to hedges, those sort of things. So we did have a spike of those. And again, we then engaged in prevention activities to try and reduce those down. We did see a dip in RTCs. However, that was only for a short period of time. But I think the most marked change was the outdoor fires that we started picking up more of.
So more people forgetting how to use a barbecue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. The other aspect, and before I go back to Clive, and Emma's hand's still up, so I don't know if that's a mistake, is very much from a asking from the local authority point of view, is what do you want to get from us as both as this committee and this council into supporting the fire service locally, from that local authority aspect? Because I know that we would work. There's already aspects where there's close cooperation on disaster response plans and things like that. If there is a catastrophic incident, whether that's basically be flooding, major fire, etc., something along the lines of Swinley Forest springs to mind from that point of view. But what areas do you want to improve on that communication and consultation? I know we've got members here that are on the board and will give their opinion, but I just want to know from the horse's mouth, as it were, how you want us to improve.
So as I touched on in the presentation, and probably didn't go into the detail that I'd intended, was in relation to our local safety plans. Now, these are literally recently been produced, and again, we've consulted widely and did invite in councillors from Wokingham who attended a review of our local safety plan, which really sets the stage for everything we're looking to achieve in the next 12 months. So when those are published, which should be early in the new financial year, then again it will give a good indication to councillors what it is that we're looking to achieve. What I'd say is we're well connected into the community safety partnerships, and I think that's really important and a good way for all services to come together and to make sure that we're approaching common issues as a team, as opposed to trying to tackle things as individuals. And we've got some really good examples of where that's worked, both with South Central Ambulance and also with Thames Valley Police. One of the things that's always top of my list is sprinklers. And any assistance that we can get from local authorities through planning, through encouragement, persuasion, whatever we can do. And obviously, any buildings that the local authority is the developer for, absolutely, if we can push sprinklers, they save lives. It's still a fact today that nobody in England has died in a premises which has got a working sprinkler system. So they really do save lives.
Sorry, the reason for that is I've literally just passed my certified information cybersecurity professional certification, and there's an element on that on fire prevention which includes sprinkler systems. And on my exam, the sprinkler systems did come up: the wet pipe, the dry pipe, the hybrid system, deluge system, foam action, pre-primed, the whole like 25 types. We had to study it, which was yeah, that was fun. And I did get the question on it, so it was useful. So yeah, that's a good answer. Thank you very much for that. One final one, and I'll go back to Clive. Employment and retention aspects. Now, for some time, I know there's been very much a shift towards I can't remember what they're called, the part-time firefighters. Is it retained?
Retained. We now refer to them as on-call firefighters.
On-call, yeah. But there seemed to have been a shift from that for many years, but that's I don't know if that's continuing, so I'd like to know that. But also, how is the recruitment and retention point of view? Is there a potential shortfall due to people reaching retirement age, or has there been a recruitment gap? Because the last thing we need is effectively the problem with firefighters. There's also an additional aspect of cost, because I know that there's some problems in some forces which, due to how expensive this area is to live, that some firefighters will qualify and then be headhunted by, let's say, somewhere in Yorkshire for a slightly better pay, and because cost of living's cheaper.
Yes, so really, I think probably if we start off with the on-call service, they're absolutely critical to the fire cover that's provided. The difficulty that we've got is really a national issue, where the recruitment and retention of on-call firefighters is a significant challenge, and we're doing everything that we can in order to facilitate recruitment and retention of those on-call firefighters. But as we've seen in the case of Wargrave, it can be extraordinarily difficult. And part of the reason for that is a change in society. The amount of time that we're asking people to be available and on call to respond to an emergency just isn't compatible with a lot of people's working lives and indeed their personal lives. So it is an ongoing challenge, but something we work extremely hard to try and support. With regards to recruitment of whole-time firefighters, we don't experience any difficulties in recruiting whole-time firefighters. Retention, as you've identified, it can be tempting on occasion for people to move on to other services where housing may be cheaper. And whilst we do lose some to that, it's not a significant issue at the current time. And with regard to the retirement profile, again, the retirement profile, we do a lot of workforce planning in order to ensure that we're in a good position, because, of course, we can't just recruit a firefighter off of the street and have them competent overnight. It does take time. So, again, there's a lot of planning work that goes into that to make sure that we've got adequate numbers.
Thank you, Trigger. That answers that question. Clive, your hand's back up.
Yes, thank you, Guy. My question here now is about smart motorways. When there was a public inquiry, or two public inquiries actually, into whether we had a smart motorway on the M4 between junction 2 and 12, I asked the inspectors quite a number of questions about the distance between the refuge areas, and thought that the distance should be shorter than it was, and that there should be more cameras on the motorway, because initially the number of cameras that they were talking about were not going to be covering the whole of this stretch from 12 to 3. Do you have any particular view as to whether this part of the motorway is going to be safe when it starts to operate as a smart motorway?
Again, I'm sorry, Councillor, in that I don't have specific knowledge with regard to the design and safety of this section of the M4. What I am aware of is that research has been done, and that the safety case has been put. So I don't think it would be correct of me to have an opinion with regard to its safety or not. As far as I understand it, the motorway has been designed to be safe for road users to use.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sure that it has, and they had lots of professional people turning up to both of those public inquiries and saying that in their view it was safe. But I think as you, as the Chief Fire Officer for quite a large part of this area where this motorway goes, I think maybe you or somebody else within your organisation should be having a close look at it to see if you agree that these experts are right. I don't want you to say yes or no now, but I would like you to consider doing that.
We will, of course, have a view that part of our job is to ensure that people are safe within Berkshire, and that includes on the roads. So we'll do everything that we can to ensure that members of the public are safe. I must just correct.
It's going to be your responsibility to sort out an accident, isn't it?
Indeed, we do respond to road traffic accidents, and that is, again, part of our statutory function. So we need to ensure that we're able to do that should the need arise. I must just correct you, Councillor, I'm not the Chief Fire Officer, not yet anyway.
Sorry.
So, but thank
sorry,
you.
I assumed you were.
That's okay.
I do apologise for that. Sorry. Okay, thank you, guys.
I believe the title is Area Officer, isn't it, Trigger?
Area Manager, yes.
There we go.
Yeah, apologies for that.
Thank you, Guy. Just go on to thinking back, and I should have asked this earlier, sorry. Back in the summer last year, obviously during lockdown, there was a huge increase in bonfires. I mean, it's something, as a councillor, you get a lot of people complaining to you about bonfires. One of the things I did notice was that there are an awful lot of people who seem to not have a clue about what it's safe to burn on a bonfire. And I can remember on one particular occasion there was this foul-smelling black smoke going up, and I couldn't work out which garden it came from. Eventually sort of identified it, and it transpired that these people had decided to burn some old plastic garden furniture. And you kind of think, who in their right mind would do that? But some people just do daft things, and I don't know whether it's something that the council could help with, you know, in our publications, to sort of, you know, spell it out to people. Yeah, by all means, burn a few leaves and branches if you've cut down a tree, but you know, there are certain things that you just should not put on a bonfire. And this wasn't the first example of it. It was the first time I'd heard about plastic chairs, but quite often, you know, you see this foul black smoke going up into the air, and you think, oh, they're burning some old tyres or something, you know. And I just wondered if it's something that the council could help with, whether there could be some kind of, you know, instructional videos made, or I don't know. Would it be helpful to you if the councils were doing something like that? Yeah.
I think you do raise a good point, Councillor. I think perhaps some education is needed. It's often something which we unfortunately get called to, and there's if a fire is not endangering a structure, so the actual fire itself is not dangerous and it is attended, there's often nothing that we can do. It would really fall under the auspices of the environmental health, possibly even the Environment Agency, should it be causing significant pollution. But I do think that perhaps there is an education piece there with regard to, what should be put on a bonfire and what should not.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Anyone else got any questions, or Clive, has your hand stuck up? We assume that Clive's hand is stuck. Okay, well, that's basically covered off all my questions. I think just quickly, seeing as this is the only item on the agenda tonight before I let everyone go, is I would like to ask our representatives on the Fire Authority if they have anything they want to add on this, any additional tidbits of information that we feel this would be useful. Angus.
Thank you, Chairman. Just taking up some of the political points without breaching anything to do with PERDA.
Please, otherwise I'll have to throw something at you virtually.
No. I think I can keep well clear of that. One is that collaboration is very much at the forefront of the fire services operation, and that's collaboration both with other fire services, but also with other blue light services and with local authorities. And it's very high on the agenda, and that there are committees that meet and look at this. Both the other blue light services are embedded in this as well. So that's a good thing to say. Clive made the point about a joint Thames Valley Fire Service, and without in any way conjecturing on the rights and wrongs of it, one of the practicalities is that Oxfordshire is embedded in the county council, and it would be difficult, but never impossible, of course, to extract it. But in parallel to that, the Fire Minister has recently been looking at the governance of fire services right across the country, because there's about 4 or 5 different models, which doesn't lead to consistency. He has views about governance and about accountability, which some people may not totally agree with, but that may change the whole picture, and it's something which we're very carefully watching on. So I just thought I'd give that sort of background to it, and just to explain to people why I jumped in earlier when Trig was talking about the fire plants. Is I'm the lead officer on the fire authority, the lead member. God forbid, lead member for what's called strategic assets, which is all the property, the fire stations and whatever, the vehicles and the IT. Thank you.
Okay, Pauline, and then we'll go to Rochelle.
Thank you. Just a few diverse points, really. Firstly, we work as one team, whether that's members or officers, and we're very, very proud of all of our officers, whether they're firefighters or whether they're non-uniformed people. They're a brilliant bunch, and we enjoy working with them. And I have to say that the Fire Authority is completely non-political, which is another joy in working with them. There's a lot of development of members, particularly when they're new to the Fire Authority, so that they understand what we have to do, and that's been very effective. We've visited the Fire Control Centre, which is so impressive, and our object is to get to a fire within 10 minutes of the person first raising the phone call, and we generally do that. So it's a very, very efficient service. Just one other thing that Trig didn't mention, we've just appointed a new Chief Fire Officer. Trevor Ferguson, who's been with us for 5 or 6 years, is about to retire. And we've appointed somebody called Wayne Bocock, who is the Chief Fire Officer at the moment at Gloucestershire County Council. But being a county council, obviously he's just one department of it, whereas when he comes to Berkshire, he'll have his own show to run. I would like to say how much the local members are involved in policy making. Every year we have a meeting to say what we think we need in Wokingham Borough and whether anything needs to be changed, and that's really, really useful. And all members and many officers meet together once a year to set a 3-year strategic plan. And there's a wonderful golden thread that goes right the way through the strategic 3-year plan, through the annual corporate plan, through the local plans, as in Wokingham, right down through to each particular fire station, and indeed to every individual's own appraisal. And so everybody knows what we're about, and they know how they're contributing to it. I think that's one of the things that sets a very positive scene right throughout the service. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Rochelle.
One of the things that has happened is the new fire stations are all tri-service stations with both the fire, Southeast ambulances, and the police. This is also making it the center of the community as well, having community facilities. The new Crowthorne Fire Station will have all of those, and the new one that will be replacing in West Berkshire will also have the same. I think this is a really good idea. And to show you how the cross-political work's going, both Pauline and I have co-sponsored the sprinklers in school motions for 3 times in Wokingham Borough, just to show you that we're trying to do the best for Wokingham and the best for Berkshire.
Thank you, Rochelle. Yes, that is an important one. Right, Clive, is your hand completely stuck now?
Sorry, Guy.
No, that's all right. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, well, that's covered off everything, I think. Trigger, thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. Sorry, we've messed you around a couple of times, but last was a bit of a write-off in regards to getting things organised. That was very useful. Look forward to seeing you again on this, and I think we can basically if you want to head off, there's only one item on our agenda, but you can head off and enjoy a nice dinner or beverage of your choice and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for the hard work that you and the rest of the service do.
Not at all. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
And that is technically the last item on the agenda,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Just a quick one from me. We were due to have the police here. Unfortunately, they pushed back and wanted to be here with the Community Safety Partnership, which I don't 100% disagree with on that assessment. So they will be coming in the summertime when we have the Community Safety Partnership at the same time. So we will be covering them off as well. Other than that, is there anything else I've forgotten, Callum? I don't think there is. Yep. Okay. Other than that, we can close the meeting at 25 past 8. Just 26 past. Thank you very much for your attendance this year, and thank you everyone for your hard work, as this is the last meeting for this municipal year. It has been a challenge, considering we had a lockdown just basically after we started the just this time last year. We have risen to the occasion, and we have delivered some very, very extensive work remotely. As things stand, my understanding is that we will be back face to face soon, based on what's come out of central government, but I'm a little wary of that, so we will see what further guidance is going to happen, seeing as I'm probably the only person here other than Cal yet to be vaccinated.